The story begins far away from the smoke and ruin of the European battlefields in the quiet, tree-lined suburb of Pleasantville, New York. It is the summer of 1942, and the United States has been fully engulfed by the Second World War for less than a year. In the backyard of the Wren family home, a dog named Chips is chasing a ball across the green grass, barking with pure, unadulterated joy. He is not a purebred show dog with a pedigree. He is a chaotic, lovable mix of German Shepherd, Collie, and Husky, possessing a thick coat and an intelligent, wolf-like face. To the neighborhood children, he is a playmate who pulls their sleds in the winter. To the Wren family, he is a guardian and a beloved member of the household. But the world is changing rapidly, and the war effort demands sacrifices that go far beyond rationing sugar or rubber. The United States military faces a critical shortage of sentries to patrol bases and coastlines. In response, a nationwide program called Dogs for Defense is launched, asking American families to donate their pets to be trained for active duty. Inside the Wren household, a difficult and heart-wrenching conversation is taking place. Edward Wren looks at Chips, who is sleeping peacefully by the fireplace, and weighs his love for the animal against the grim reports coming from the front lines. Soldiers are dying overseas, and the Army claims that a well-trained dog can save American lives. With a heavy heart, the family decides that keeping Chips safe at home while young men are fighting abroad feels like a selfish luxury. They make the painful decision to volunteer him for service. The day of departure is etched into the memory of the family forever. There is no fanfare, just a somber drive to the collection point and a final, tearful goodbye. Chips is loaded into a wooden crate, his tail wagging uncertainly as he looks through the slats at his weeping owners. He does not understand that he is leaving his life of comfort behind. He does not know that he will never again chase a ball in that specific backyard. As the truck pulls away, carrying him toward a destiny that will eventually lead him to the history books, Chips ceases to be a family pet. He is now government property, a recruit in the Canine Corps, destined for a war he cannot possibly comprehend. He arrives at the War Dog Training Center in Front Royal, Virginia, where the atmosphere is a stark contrast to the gentle suburbs of New York. The air is filled with the barking of hundreds of other dogs and the shouting of drill instructors. The training is rigorous and unforgiving. The playful habits of domestic life are stripped away and replaced with military discipline. Chips is taught to ignore the sound of gunfire, to crawl under barbed wire, and to attack on command. He proves to be a natural soldier, intelligent, aggressive when necessary, and fiercely loyal. However, his mixed heritage makes him independent, sometimes stubborn, a trait that frustrates the trainers, but also signals a keen, problem-solving mind. It is here that Chips meets the man who will become his partner and his entire world. Private John P. Rowell? Rowell is a young handler assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division, and he initially views the shaggy, mixed-breed dog with skepticism. He is used to seeing sleek Dobermans or purebred shepherds. But as they work together through the mud and the obstacle courses, a profound bond begins to form. Rowell realizes that Chips isn't just following orders blindly. He is watching, listening, and protecting. They learn to communicate without words, relying on hand signals and subtle body language. In the logic of the canine units, they are no longer two individuals. They are a single combat team. By the autumn of 1942, the training is complete. The unit receives its deployment orders for Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa. Chips and Rowell board a massive transport ship, descending into the cramped, noisy hold that smells of diesel fuel and wet fur. The ship sways violently as it crosses the Atlantic, heading toward a hostile shore. Chips lies at rowellsfeet.com amidst the anxiety of the thousands of young soldiers surrounding them. The dog from Pleasantville has been transformed into a weapon of war. He is about to face the fire of the Axis powers, unaware that he carries within him a courage that will soon become legendary. The steel ramp of the landing craft slams down into the surf of French Morocco with a deafening crash, marking the chaotic beginning of Operation Torch. It is November 8, 1942, and the men of the 3rd Infantry Division are charging into the unknown. For Chips, the transition from the rocking ship to the hostile shore is an assault on the senses. The air is thick with the thunder of naval gunfire from the battleships offshore and the screaming engines of aircraft strafing the beaches near Fada. The water is cold, the sand is churning under thousands of boots, and the smell of cordite and burning oil overpowers the salt air. Private Rowell grips the leather leash tightly, his knuckles white, guiding the dog through the confusion. Chips does not panic. Instead, he lowers his head, his hackles raised, feeding off the tension of the men around him. He is no longer the family pet from Pleasantville. He has officially become a soldier on the front lines of the Second World War. The North African campaign introduces the unit to a new and relentless enemy: the environment itself. As the army pushes inland, the landscape transforms into a harsh crucible of blinding sand and jagged rocks. The days are scorching hot, baking the soldiers in their wool uniforms, while the nights turn freezing cold. Chips adapts to these brutal conditions with a resilience that surprises even the veteran officers. While the men struggle with the dust clogging their weapons and the meager rations, the dog remains vigilant. He trots alongside Rowell, his paws toughening against the rough terrain, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon. He becomes a mascot of sorts, a reminder of home in a place that feels like the surface of another planet, boosting the morale of the entire platoon simply by wagging his tail. However, his primary role is not to provide comfort, but to ensure survival. As the sun sets over the desert, the real danger begins. German and Italian patrols are active in the darkness, probing the American lines for weaknesses. It is during these long, terrifying nights that Chips proves his worth. His senses are far superior to any human technology available at the time. He can hear the snap of a twig or the shift of gravel hundreds of yards away. On multiple occasions, his low growl or the sudden pricking of his ears alerts the sentries to an approaching enemy long before they are visible. The soldiers learn to trust the dog's instincts implicitly. If Chips is alert, the safety catches on the rifles are clicked off. He is the first line of defense, a living radar system that allows the exhausted men to sleep with a sliver of security. As the months pass and the Allies secure victory in North Africa, the 3rd Infantry Division is hardened by battle. They are no longer green recruits. They are a formidable fighting force. But the High Command has bigger plans. The target shifts north across the Mediterranean Sea to the soft underbelly of Axis-controlled Europe. The order comes down for Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. This is not just a skirmish in the desert. It is a massive amphibious assault against a deeply entrenched enemy. The mood on the transport ships is different this time. The men know that the resistance in Sicily will be fierce and the terrain will be treacherous. Rowell spends his time checking Chips' gear, talking to him in low tones, preparing his partner for the violence that awaits them. On July 10th, 1943, the ramp drops again, this time onto the beaches of Licata, Sicily. The resistance is immediate and ferocious. Machine gun fire rakes the sand, and artillery shells scream overhead, throwing geysers of water and dirt into the air. The chaos is absolute. Chips and Rowell rush from the landing craft, sprinting across the exposed beach to find cover in the dunes. The noise is overwhelming, a constant roar of explosions that shakes the ground beneath their feet. Yet, amidst this industrial slaughter, the bond between the man and the dog remains the anchor. Chip stays glued to Rowell's side, moving only when he moves, stopping when he stops. A disciplined shadow amidst the carnage. They push inland, fighting their way through the rugged hills and ancient olive groves. The Germans have turned every farmhouse and ridge into a fortress. The progress is measured in yards and blood. As they approach a strategic position near the village of Agrigento, the unit comes under withering fire from a concealed machine gun nest. The soldiers are pinned down, unable to move without being cut to pieces. The enemy is invisible, hidden inside a concrete pillbox that dominates the road. Rowell and Chips are trapped in a shallow ditch, dirt kicking up around them as bullets chew up the ground. The situation is desperate. They are stuck. They are outgunned, and the enemy knows exactly where they are. It is here, under the burning Sicilian sun, that the dog from New York is about to do the impossible. The machine gun nest is a concrete blister on the hillside, an impenetrable position that spits death at anything moving on the road below. Private Rowell and the rest of the platoon are pressed flat against the scorching earth, the air above them buzzing with the angry snap of bullets. The heat is suffocating, a mix of the Sicilian summer sun and the intense thermal radiation from the rocky ground. Every time a soldier tries to lift his head to return fire, the enemy gunners unleash a fresh volley, pinning the Americans in a deadly stalemate. Rowell clutches his rifle, his face covered in dust, checking on Chips. The dog is agitated, whining low in his throat, the head on his back standing straight up. He can smell the enemy, and he can feel the fear radiating from his handler. The noise of the battle is deafening, but for Chips, the source of the danger is clear. In a moment of chaos that defies military protocol, the situation spirals out of control. Whether the leash slips from Rowell's sweaty grip, or the dog simply snaps under the pressure of the attack is unclear, but suddenly, Chips is loose. He does not run away from the noise. He runs directly toward it. Rowell screams for him to come back, but his voice is swallowed by the roar of the machine gun. The dog is a blur of motion, a low-profile target sprinting across the kill zone. He moves with the speed of a wolf, zigzagging through the scrub brush and the rocks, heading straight for the dark, flashing slit of the pillbox. The American soldiers watch in disbelief, certain they are witnessing the senseless death of their mascot. The German and Italian defenders inside the bunker are focused on the infantry down the hill. They do not see the animal until it is too late. Chips reaches the perimeter of the fortification and launches himself through the open firing port, diving into the darkness of the bunker like a grenade. What happens next is hidden from the view of the platoon, but the change in the soundscape is instantaneous. The rhythmic, mechanical thumping of the machine gun stops abruptly. It is replaced by a chaotic cacophony of shouting, crashing equipment, and terrifying, high-pitched screams of pain. The disciplined firing position has turned into a confined cage with an angry predator inside. Rowell seizes the opportunity. Seeing the gun fall silent, he leads the charge up the hill, his rifle raised, fearing what he will find inside. But before the Americans can even reach the door of the pillbox, the occupants come stumbling out. One by one, Italian soldiers emerge from the smoke, their hands raised high in the air, terror etched on their faces. They are not surrendering to the approaching infantry. They are fleeing the demon in the bunker. Following them out is Chips, snarling and clamping his jaws onto the throat of the machine gunner. The enemy soldiers are trembling, not from the fear of capture, but from the shock of being mauled in their own stronghold. Rowell rushes forward, pulling Chips off the terrified gunner. The dog is panting heavily, his fur matted with dust and blood. Upon closer inspection, Rowell realizes that Chips has not emerged unscathed. The muzzle of the machine gun was hot when he attacked, and the dog has sustained powder burns on his face and a deep scalp wound from a pistol shot that grazed him during the scuffle. Despite the injuries, Chips is still standing guard, growling at the 4 prisoners he has single-handedly forced into submission. The rest of the platoon gathers around, staring at the scene in stunned silence. They have just watched a family pet from New York neutralize a fortified machine gun nest that had pinned down an entire squad. The medics rush to treat the dog before they even look at the prisoners. They clean his wounds and apply bandages, treating him with the same care and respect they would offer a fellow soldier. The news of the event spreads like wildfire through the 3rd Infantry Division. The story of the one-dog army travels up the chain of command, eventually reaching the generals planning the next phase of the invasion. That night, as Chips sleeps off the shock of the battle, bandaged and exhausted, he is no longer just a sentry or a scout. He has become a legend. But as the sun sets over Sicily, the bureaucracy of the army is already churning. They want to give him a medal, unaware that this act of recognition will spark a controversy that will strip him of everything. The story of the Pillbox assault travels through the ranks of the Allied forces faster than a telegram. In the days following the battle, Chips is no longer treated as a mere animal. He is elevated to the status of a celebrity among the weary soldiers from other platoons trek across the rocky Sicilian terrain just to catch a glimpse of the dog who took a machine gun nest. They bring him their saved ration strips of bacon, chunks of beef, and even chocolate, which Private Rowe carefully confiscates for the dog's own good. Chips, sporting a white bandage around his head where the bullet grazed him, accepts the adoration with a calm, stoic dignity. He does not understand the concept of heroism or fame. He simply knows that his pack is happy and that he is safe by his master's side. The bravery displayed by the dog catches the attention of the highest levels of the 3rd Infantry Division Command. Captain Edward Parr, the company commander, drafts an official recommendation that is unprecedented in the history of the United States Army. He argues that if a human soldier had performed that specific act of valor, charging a fortified position single-handedly and forcing the surrender of enemy troops, they would be eligible for the nation's highest honors. He sees no reason why Chips should be penalized for his species. The paperwork is stamped, approved, and sent up the chain, challenging the rigid bureaucracy of the War Department. On a dusty airfield in Italy, a ceremony takes place that defies all military tradition. With the battalion standing at attention, Major General Lucien Truscott bends down to attach a medal to Chip's collar. It is not a token award or a novelty ribbon. Chipsy is awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the 2nd highest military decoration of the United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in combat. He is also awarded the Silver Star and the Purple Heart for the wounds he sustained. As the medal clinks against his collar, Chips wags his tail, more interested in the general's hand than the prestige of the moment. The soldiers cheer wildly. For them, this is justice. It is a recognition that courage is not a uniquely human trait. However, as the news of the decorated dog reaches the United States, it sparks a conflict that no one on the front lines anticipated. The press loves the story. Chips becomes a national icon, his face appearing in newspapers from New York to California. He is the hero of Sicily, a symbol of American grit. But in the halls of the Pentagon and among certain veteran groups, there is grumbling. Bureaucrats and traditionalists argue that awarding military medals to an animal demeans the honor of the human soldiers who died to earn them. A controversy begins to brew in Washington, threatening to strip Chips of the very honors he bled for. But war does not pause for political debates or medal ceremonies. The Allies are pushing forward, crossing the Strait of Messina to invade the Italian mainland. The campaign shifts from the dry hills of Sicily to the muddy, mountainous spine of Italy. The fighting becomes a slow, grinding slog against a German army that is retreating inch by bloody inch. The weather turns foul, turning the roads into rivers of sludge. Chips and Rowell are right back in the thick of it. The medals on his collar are packed away for safekeeping. Out here, they are just shiny targets for snipers. Chips is different now. The wound on his head has healed into a scar, but the experience has changed him. He is more cautious, more attuned to the specific sounds of the German weaponry. He is a veteran in the truest sense of the word. As the unit approaches the heavily fortified Winter Line, the challenges escalate. They face minefields, artillery barrages, and the constant threat of ambush. The dog's role evolves from a sentry to a guardian angel. He sleeps curled against Rowell's back in the freezing foxholes, sharing warmth and keeping the nightmares at bay. They are marching toward Rome, unaware that the real battle for Chip's legacy is being fought not against the Germans, but against the regulations of the army he serves so faithfully. The Italian campaign turns into a grueling war of attrition, a slow and bloody crawl up the spine of the Apennines. The soldiers call it the Mud War. The relentless rain turns the roads into swamps that swallow trucks whole, and the freezing temperatures in the mountains sap the will of even the toughest men. For Chips, the environment is just another obstacle to overcome. His thick coat, a genetic gift from his husky ancestors, protects him from the biting wind that cuts through the thin field jackets of the American GI. He becomes a source of physical warmth for the squad, often sleeping in a pile of shivering soldiers, his body heat serving as a lifeline during the long, dark nights. On the Winter Line, the war here is not about grand maneuvers. It is about survival, inch by freezing inch. It is during this stalemate that Chips's protective instincts, honed to a razor's edge by combat, almost lead to a diplomatic disaster. During a tour of the front lines, Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower visits the 3rd Infantry Division. Seeing the famous dog who captured the machine gun nest, the general bends down to pet him, reaching out a hand in a gesture of friendly recognition. But Chips does not see a general. He sees a stranger reaching for his handler. In a flash, he snaps, nipping the hand of the most powerful man in the European theater. The entourage freezes in horror. In any other circumstance, attacking a superior officer would be a court-martial offense. But Eisenhower, a practical man, simply laughs it off, respecting the dog's unwavering loyalty to his unit. Chips is not a mascot to be picked. He is a weapon on a hair trigger. While Chips is defending his handler from generals in Italy, the battle over his medals in Washington reaches its conclusion. The controversy stirred up by the press and the complaints from traditionalist groups forces the War Department to act. A new directive is issued, a cold piece of bureaucratic paper that overrides the reality of the battlefield. It states unequivocally that no military decorations are to be awarded to animals. The logic is that medals are for human souls capable of moral choice, not for beasts acting on instinct. The order is sent down the chain of command. Chips is to be stripped of his Distinguished Service Cross, his Silver Star, and his Purple Heart. The news hits the unit like a physical blow. To the men of the 3rd Infantry, who have watched Chips bleed and fight alongside them, the decision is an insult. It reinforces the feeling that the decision-makers in the Pentagon are completely detached from the reality of the war. Captain Parr is forced to officially rescind the awards. The medals are taken back, placed in velvet boxers, and returned to the supply chain. Chips, of course, does not care. He does not mourn the loss of the ribbons. He is content with a scratch behind the ears and a share of but for Private Rowell and the other men, it is a bitter pill to swallow. They realize that to the Army, Chips is officially just equipment, with the same status as a jeep or a rifle. However, the stripping of the medals has an unintended effect. It transforms Chips from a military hero into a martyr of the common soldier. The men of the division become even more protective of him. If the Army won't recognize his valor, they will. They begin to craft their own unofficial commendations, telling his story to every replacement soldier who joins the platoon. Chips becomes the living embodiment of their own struggles, overworked, but doing the job regardless of the recognition. The bond between the dog and the division transcends regulations. He is an honorary private first class in their hearts, regardless of what the paperwork says. The war, however, does not stop for hurt feelings. As the winter of 1943 turns into the spring of 1944, the stalemate in Italy is finally broken. Rome falls, but there is no time to celebrate. The 3rd Infantry Division is pulled off the line for a new, massive operation. They are preparing for Operation Dragoon, the amphibious invasion of southern France. Chips is vetted by the veterinarians and cleared for combat once again. He has survived the deserts of Africa, the mountains of Sicily, and the mud of Italy. Now, he faces one more beach landing, one more gauntlet of fire. The disgraced hero is going back to work, ready to prove once again that courage is not defined by a piece of metal on a ribbon. On August 15, 1944, the ramp of a landing craft drops into the warm waters of the Mediterranean, marking Chips' 3rd amphibious assault of the war. Operation Dragoon, the invasion of southern France, is massive in scale, but for the dog and his handler, it feels like a grim routine they have performed too many times before. The chaos of the beaches near St. Tropez is deafening, but Chips moves with the practiced efficiency of a veteran. He does not flinch at the naval gunfire pounding the coast. He simply stays low, matching Private Rowell's pace, his eyes scanning the tree line for movement. The playfulness of his puppyhood in Pleasantville is a distant memory now. He is a hardened combatant, his fur graying slightly at the muzzle, a living record of the campaigns in Africa, Sicily, and Italy. The nature of the war shifts dramatically as the 3rd Infantry Division pushes north up the Rhone Valley. Unlike the static, muddy trenches of Italy, this is a war of movement. The German army is in full retreat, and the Americans are chasing them with relentless speed. For Chips, this means long days of marching on asphalt roads and nights spent in constant vigilance against rearguard ambushes. The liberated French towns greet them with wine and flowers, but Rowell keeps Chips on a short leash. The crowds, the noise of celebration, and the unpredictable environments are stressful for a dog conditioned to react to threats with lethal force. To Chips, a running civilian looks dangerously similar to a charging soldier, and Rowell must constantly manage the animal's aggression. As the weeks turn into months, The physical and psychological toll of 2 years of continuous combat begins to show. It is not just the men who suffer from battle fatigue. The dogs do, too. Rowell notices that Chips is sleeping less, waking up with a start at the slightest noise. The loud crack of artillery, which he used to ignore, now makes him tremble slightly before he regains his composure. The constant state of hyperarousal is wearing down his nervous system. Yet, he never refuses a command. He continues to take point on patrols, walking ahead of the squad into the dark forests of the Vosges Mountains, sniffing out mines and hidden snipers that would otherwise kill his human pack. The approach to the German border brings a new intensity to the conflict. The enemy is no longer fighting for conquered territory. They are fighting for their homeland. The resistance stiffens, and the number of prisoners captured by the division skyrockets. It is here that the title of the dog who helped capture thousands becomes a daily reality. Chips is often tasked with guarding large groups of surrendered German soldiers while the infantry secures the area. The enemy troops, many of whom have heard rumors of the American wolf who stormed the bunker in Sicily, eye him with terrified respect. A low growl from Chips is more effective at keeping 100 men in line than a dozen rifles. The winter of 1944 hits the division with brutal force. The fighting in the Colmar pocket is some of the fiercest of the war. A frozen hell of snow and shrapnel. Chips and Rowell are living in foxholes dug into the frozen earth, sharing body heat to survive temperatures that drop well below zero. The dog's paws are cracked and bleeding from the ice, treated daily with salve by Rowell, who prioritizes the dog's health over his own. The bond between them has transcended friendship. They are two halves of the same soul, keeping each other tethered to sanity in a world that has gone mad. Rowell talks to Chips about New York, about the Wren family, promising him that if they survive this final push, he will see a backyard again. In the spring of 1945, they cross the Rhine River. It is a symbolic and terrifying threshold. They are now deep inside Nazi Germany. The cities are ruined skeletons, and the fanaticism of the remaining defenders is unpredictable. The end of the war feels tantalizingly close, but these are the most dangerous days. Veteran soldiers know that the last man to die in a war is the most tragic figure of all. Chips, tired and battle-worn, walks through the rubble of German towns, his ears twitching at the sound of sniper fire. He has survived every major campaign of the European theater, but the final mile is always the longest. The dog who lost his medals is now fighting simply to survive the peace. May 8, 1945, brings a silence to Europe that is more deafening than the artillery. The guns, finally, stop firing. The news of the German surrender spreads through the 3rd Infantry Division not with a shout, but with a collective exhale of relief. For Chips, the end of the war is a confusing shift in reality. For 3 years, his entire existence has been defined by the adrenaline of combat, the smell of explosives, and the hypervigilance required to keep his pack alive. Now, the threat is gone. The soldiers are laughing, drinking wine, and sleeping in open fields without digging foxholes. The dog remains watchful, his ears swiveling at the sound of celebratory fireworks, unsure if the danger has truly passed, or if this is just another lull in the violence. For Private Rowell, the victory is bittersweet. The dog's 4 defense program was built on a solemn promise. The dogs were loaned to the army, not given. With the war over, the contract dictates that Chips must be returned to his original owners, the Wren family in New York. Rowell looks at the dog sleeping at his feet, scarred and graying, and feels a profound sense of loss. He has spent more time with Chips than with his own family. They have saved each other's lives countless times. To the army, it is a simple matter of returning property. To Rowell, it feels like losing a limb. He knows he cannot keep him. He knows that a family is waiting for their beloved pet to come home. The separation happens at a processing center in Italy. It is a moment of quiet heartbreak amidst the chaos of demobilization. Rowell kneels down in the dust, holding Chip's head in his hands for the last time. He whispers his thanks, burying his face in the dog's thick ruff, trying to convey a lifetime of gratitude in a few hurried minutes. He clips the leash onto a transport crate, the same kind of wooden box that brought Chips to the war years ago. When the order comes to load up, Chips resists. He plants his feet, looking back at Rowell. Confused as to why his handler is not coming with him, it takes a gentle, devastating push from Rowell to get him into the crate. As the truck drives away, taking the dog toward the coast and the ship home, Rowell stands alone, a victor of the war who has lost his best friend. Chip's journey back to the United States is the reverse of his deployment, but the dog inside the crate is fundamentally different. He arrives back at the War Dog Training Center in Front Royal, Virginia, the place where his transformation began. But this time, the mission is different. Before any dog can be returned to civilian life, they must undergo a process called detraining. It is a psychological reverse engineering designed to strip away the killer instincts implanted by the Army. The trainers must teach these combat veterans that loud noises are safe, that strangers are friends, and that they no longer need to attack on command. For some dogs, the psychological scars of the war are too deep, and they cannot be but Chips proves to be as resilient in peace as he was in war. He is tired, but his intelligence shines through. He begins to understand that the rules have changed again. He learns to tolerate the presence of people who aren't wearing uniforms. He learns that he doesn't need to guard his food bowl with lethal intensity. The aggression that allowed him to storm a machine gun nest in Sicily is slowly dialed back, replaced by the dormant memories of his life as a pet. He is being prepared for the most difficult transition of all, becoming a family dog again. The Wren family waits in Pleasantville with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. They have followed Chip's exploits in the newspapers. They know he is a hero, a celebrity, and a decorated veteran. But they also wonder if the dog coming back to them is the same one they sent away in 1942. They have read stories of war dogs who came back aggressive to live in a house. When the notification arrives that Chips has cleared the detraining process and is on his way home, the neighborhood holds its breath. The hero is returning, stripped of his medals, but carrying the invisible weight of a journey that took him from the backyard to the bunker and back again. The military transport truck rolls down the quiet streets of Pleasantville, New York, looking out of place amidst the manicured lawns and white picket fences. It is December 1945. The war has been over 4 months, but for the Wren family, the final peace treaty is signed only when the truck brakes hiss to a halt in front of their driveway. The entire family stands on the porch, huddled together against the winter chill, their breath-forming clouds in the air. There is a palpable tension in the group. They remember the playful, chaotic dog they sent away 3 years ago. But the reports and the newspaper clippings have described a different animal, a killer of men, a stormer of bunkers, a decorated war hero. They wonder if the creature inside the crate will even recognize them, or if the war has erased the memory of his first pack. The soldier driving the truck lowers the tailgate and unlatches the wooden crate. For a long, agonizing moment, there is no movement. Then, slowly, a gray-muscled snout emerges, followed by the heavy, muscular frame of a battle-hardened shepherd mix. Chips steps onto the pavement, sniffing the air. He stands rigid, his ears swiveling, scanning the perimeter of the yard for threats, just as he did in the ruins of Germany. Then, the wind shifts, carrying the scent of the family across the lawn. The transformation is instantaneous and heartbreaking. The soldier vanishes, and the pet returns. His tail begins to thump against the side of the truck, a slow rhythm that accelerates into a frantic wag. He bounds up the walkway, not with the disciplined trot of a sentry, but with the clumsy enthusiasm of a long-lost friend. The reunion is a flurry of tears and fur. The children, now 3 years older, bury their faces in his neck, and Edward Wren kneels down to welcome the soldier home. But as they stroke his coat, their fingers trace the physical cost of his service. They feel the thick scar tissue on his scalp, where the Italian pistol bullet grazed him. They see the burn marks on his muzzle from the muzzle flash of the machine gun, broader in the chest, and his eyes hold a depth of seriousness that wasn't there before. He accepts the affection with a stoic gratitude, leaning his weight against Mr. Wren's leg, as if to say that the long patrol is finally over. Inside the house, the adjustment to civilian life begins. It is a strange, delicate dance. Chips remembers the layout of the rooms, but his habits have been rewired by survival instincts. On his first night back, he does not curl up by the fireplace to sleep. Instead, he paces the hallways long after the lights go out. He checks the front door, then the back door, then the windows. He moves silently from room to room, checking on the breathing of the sleeping children. Two, their family. A, is resting. Two, Chips. He is on guard duty. He has traded the platoon for the family, but the responsibility to protect them remains the driving force of his existence. The neighborhood treats him with a reverence usually reserved for returning generals. The story of his stripped medals has only made him more popular, a symbol of the humble, unappreciated grunt. Neighbors drop by with choice cuts of meat from the butcher, and the local children point and whisper when he has walked on a leash. However, the Wrens quickly learn that Chips is no longer a public property. He tolerates the attention, but he does not seek it. Crowds make him nervous. Sudden movements make him flinch. The family becomes his shield, politely turning away strangers and reporters, giving the old veteran the space he needs to decompress from the constant adrenaline of the front. The war, however, is never completely gone. One afternoon, a car backfires loudly on the street, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the quiet suburb. In the living room, the reaction is terrifyingly swift. Chips does not bark. He drops instantly to a crouch, his lips curling back to reveal his teeth, his body coiled to spring at an invisible attacker. For a few terrifying seconds, the Wolf of Sicily is back in the room, ready to kill. Then, seeing the frightened faces of the children, the red haze clears. He relaxes, shaking his fur as if to cast off the memory, and nudges the youngest child's hand with his nose. It is a stark reminder to the family that while the dog has left the war will never fully leave the dog. The celebrity status of Chips creates a strange friction in the quiet town of Pleasantville. While the army has officially stripped him of his medals, the American public has done the opposite. They have elevated him to the status of a folk hero. Letters arrive at the Wren household by the sackful, addressed simply to Chips, New York. They come from school children who draw pictures of him chasing tanks, and from mothers of soldiers who thank the dog for guarding their sons while they slept in foreign fields. Hollywood producers call, offering contracts for movies, wanting to turn the scarred veteran into the next Rin Tin Tin, but the Wren family stands firm as a protective wall around their dog. They refuse the spotlight. They understand what the producers do not. Chips is not an actor playing a role. He's a survivor who has earned the right to silence. The passing months of 1946 revealed the true cost of the war on the dog's body. Chips is only a few years old, but he moves with the stiffness of an elderly animal. The cold, damp nights in the foxholes of Italy have left him with arthritis that flares up when the rain comes. The hair around his muzzle has turned completely white, and his eyes, though still sharp, are often clouded with a deep, unreadable exhaustion. He spends long hours lying in the sun on the back porch, letting the heat soak into his aching joints. To the casual observer, he is just a sleeping dog. 2. Edward Wren, who watches him closely. He is a creature trying to heal a soul that was stretched to its breaking point by the unnatural stresses of combat. Despite the physical decline, the soldier inside the dog never truly retires. The instinct to patrol is etched into his DNA. Every evening, as the sun begins to set the standard time in the military, when attacks were most likely, Chips performs a ritual that breaks the family's heart. He gets up from his rug, shakes off the stiffness, and walks the perimeter of the property. He checks the fence line. He sniffs the wind. He sits by the front gate for an hour, watching the street with an intense, unblinking gaze. He is waiting for the enemy that is no longer there. The Wrens do not try to stop him. They know this is the duty that kept him alive. They simply leave the porch light on, a beacon to let him know that the command post is secure. The connection to his past life arrives in the form of letters from the men of the 3rd Infantry Division. Private Rowell, now a civilian trying to find his own way back to normalcy, writes to the family. Often, he asks about Chip's appetite, his mood, his health. These letters are read aloud at the dinner table, a bridge between the two worlds the dog has inhabited. Rowell shares stories that he never told the officers, stories of how Chips would curl up against him during the artillery barrage, how he would share his water ration in the desert. These letters serve as the unofficial medals that the army took away. They are the testimony of the men who know that without this dog, they would be names on a memorial wall, not husbands and fathers building new lives in peace. As the year winds down, Chip's health begins to deteriorate rapidly. The resilience that carried him through beach landings and mountain assaults begins to falter against the mundane biology of kidney failure. The veterinarians suspect it is a complication from the poor diet and stress of the war years. He becomes slower, his appetite fades, and the spark in his eyes begins to dim. The family brings his bed into the living room, the center of the house, so he is never alone. The children, who once romped with him in the snow, now sit quietly beside him, reading books and stroking his head. The energy in the house shifts from celebration to a quiet, reverent vigil. In these final weeks, the distinction between the war dog and the family pet finally dissolves completely. Chips is no longer guarding the perimeter. He is no longer listening for the sound of a bolt-action cycling or the whine of a mortar. He is simply resting, surrounded by the specific, comforting sense of his homewood smoke, floor wax, and the people he loves. The nightmares of the machine gun nests seem to recede, replaced by the gentle rhythm of the household. He has completed his mission. He has brought his men home, and he has returned to his family. Now, the old soldier is preparing for his final journey, one that he must take without a handler, into a peace that is finally, truly permanent. The end comes not with the bang of a mortar shell, but with the quiet fading of a winter afternoon. In September 1946, just 7 months after returning home from the war, Chips passes away in the Wren family home. He is only 6 years old. The veterinarians cite complications from liver failure, a toll taken by the years of poor rations, stress, and the physical punishment of the campaigns in Africa and Europe. He dies peacefully, surrounded by the people he fought so hard to return to. The news of his death travels quickly, not just through Pleasantville, but across the country. The newspapers run the obituary of the hero of Sicily, and in homes across America, veterans of the 3rd Infantry Division bow their heads in silent tribute to the comrade who walked point for them when no one else would. He is laid to rest in the Peaceable Kingdom Pet Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York, a place of dignity fitting for a soldier of his caliber. The funeral is a somber affair, attended by the family and those who knew the truth of his service. There is number 21 gun salute, and no flood-draped coffin provided by the government, as the regulations still classify him as equipment. However, the lack of official pomp does not diminish the gravity of the moment. As the earth covers him, the controversy of his stripped medals hangs heavy in the air. He goes into the ground as an unadorned private, despite having performed deeds that would have earned a human a place in the history books alongside the greatest heroes of the war. For decades, the story of Chips fades into the sepia-toned archives of history. He becomes a footnote, a trivia question about the only dog to be awarded and then stripped of the Distinguished Service Cross. Army maintains its policy: animals are tools, not soldiers. The medals remain in their boxers, and the official record stands. But the legend of the dog who stormed the pillbox refuses to die. It is kept alive by the men of the 3rd Infantry, who tell the story to their children and grandchildren. Authors and historians begin to dig into the files, uncovering the letters from Captain Parr and the testimony of Private Rowell. The injustice of the revoked awards begins to look less like a regulation and more like a mistake that needs correcting. The turn of the century brings a shift in how the world views animal heroism. In 2018, 73 years after his death, justice finally catches up with the legend. In a prestigious ceremony at the Churchill War Rooms in London, Chips is posthumously awarded the PDSA Dickin Medal, the highest award any animal in the world can receive for gallantry in military conflict, the animal equivalent of the Victoria Cross or the Medal of Honor. The citation reads almost exactly like the one written by his commander in 1943, recognizing his unwavering protection of his handler and the assault on the machine gun nest. It is a validation that transcends borders and bureaucracies. The recognition continues in 2019, when Chips becomes one of the first recipients of the Animals in War and Peace Medal of Bravery in a ceremony on Capitol Hill in Washington. DC members of the Wren family and descendants of the soldiers he served with are there to accept the honor. The medals that were stripped away in shame are replaced by honors that are given with reverence. The United States military finally acknowledges what Private Rowell knew in the mud of Italy. Bravery is not determined by species, but by action. The photos of Chips with his alert eyes and shaggy coat, is displayed on the screens, looking out over a room of generals and senators who stand in applause. Chip's legacy is now secure, carved not just in stone, but in the conscience of the nation. He represents the thousands of dogs who served, suffered, and died in the silence of the Canine Corps. He is the eternal sentry, the reminder of the bond that exists between the soldier and the dog. In the quiet cemetery in New York, his grave is often visited by veterans and dog handlers who leave small token stones, coins, and American flags. The war is long over, and the bunker in Sicily has crumbled into dust, but the spirit of the dog from Pleasantville remains. He was a pet who became a warrior, a hero who became an outcast, and finally, a legend who found his way home.